we know that there is a labor shortage coming. I mean, 2030 is going to look very different than today with the construction force. Change is hard. There's a lot of pride in construction. There's a lot of pride in the workforce. And so to say, wait a second, I've done this for 20 years out in the field in the rain and the snow, and I traveled and I did all of this, and to look at it differently, there's certainly a barrier there. It has taken time. I feel like the industry is, something's shifting. I feel it. I feel like we get more calls. We still have to explain what industrialized construction is and convince people. I always feel like we're convincing, but it will shift. It's shifting over time. What if we change the definition of standards?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Activating Curiosity. I am Ryan Ware. Before we start the show today, I want to thank everybody for being here, listening, watching on YouTube, wherever you're getting your podcast. I want to thank you again for continuing to follow, but if you can, go ahead and share with those people in your network that you believe can benefit from these conversations that have to do with the construction industry, leading change, and going through uncertainty and adoption of innovative solutions. So if you continue to like that podcast, feel free to share with that network. That is one way as an independent podcaster, we can continue to grow and reach other people. This conversation today is one that we've had with many guests, but every time we get a guest on, the point of view is always different because their background, their lived experiences, how they got to this point in their career to be part of industrialized construction is always different. And as you think through these things, we're talking about all of us as humans. So we want to hear that human side of construction. And nothing's more important as we begin to look at industrialized construction and that convergence that we're seeing and feeling with all of the technology, methods of construction, delivery models, as it relates to delivering all types of projects in all vertical markets. This episode of Activating Curiosity is brought to you by Overcast Innovations. Architects, designers. Have you ever conducted a project walkthrough, looked up at the ceiling and wondered, when did that decision get made? Not because it was necessarily wrong, but because it wasn't your original design. Most have experienced that moment. Somewhere between design, coordination, procurement, and installation, decisions get made that shape a space. The question is whether design could have been preserved if questions were asked and answered earlier in the process. Overcast Innovations is helping project teams rethink how building systems are coordinated by bringing key decisions forward and reducing complexity before work reaches the field. Because protecting design starts long before installation ever begins. Learn more at overcastinnovations.com. So today I have with me Melanie Taylor. She is the Vice President of BILT. They were launched by BOLT Construction, which many probably know, large national general contractor located here in the States, have spent a lot of years within lean construction as well as prefabrication. So, hey, Melanie, welcome to Activating Curiosity.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I am too. I think I came across you via my network when I realized that BILT had been launched by BOLT, having seen what BOLT was doing during the pandemic and seeing them out in California as well as across the United States. But before we dive into all of that story between BILT and BOLT, let's talk a little bit about you, Melanie, and kind of your path and your journey of how you got to be the VP of construction at BILT.
Sure. I'm happy to share a little bit about myself. I will say I'm glad the network worked. I'm glad you got connected with us. This is a great opportunity. My background. So this is going way back, truthfully. I come from a construction family, so I absolutely love construction. It's in my blood. It's who I am. my family had a construction business. So I certainly was out on construction sites when I was in high school, out working in the field. So I have a certain love and comfort with the industry. Graduated from UW-Madison, civil engineering, absolutely loved it. Truthfully, I thought I'd go more the science route, but you can't get away from what you love. So I found myself focusing on construction management, had the opportunity to work for BILT right out of school. So BILT, is well known in Wisconsin and now across the nation. At the time in Wisconsin, Oscar BILT came to speak to UW-Madison, and I was just moved by the human element of him, the family. Mm-hmm. He was a father and a husband, and that really moved me. He respected his workers. So I chose to work for BILT right out of school. Spent many years in traditional construction, right? Working up through project engineering, project management, project executive, all of that, those operational roles. Found myself with the opportunity to serve our Chicago team. So I led our Chicago operations and office for 5 years. This was pre-COVID. And as you mentioned, BILT is very strong in lean manufacturing, or lean construction. Now I'm in manufacturing, lean construction. And that led us to find customers that were into integrated project delivery, collaborative delivery. And we found some clients that were focused on metrics that led us to prefabrication and modular. So we actually did a fair amount of work, 2015, in the prefabrication and modular space. COVID happened, and I had the opportunity to take a position in our corporate operations and focus on our self-perform teams. So leading concrete, masonry, focusing on productivity. And that was an interesting aspect because it started to link that, the advantages of prefab and modular with self-perform and linking productivity. So I did that for a number of years, and our self-perform teams also supported our modular work. And, as soon as BILT was interested in launching BILT, and we see this as the future again, because we have a lean mindset, eventually it leads you to prefab and modular. So when this opportunity came to start a new business and launch BILT, I was definitely excited for the opportunity to sort of take all of the work I've done to date and create something new, build a business. And it's something I believe in. It's certainly the future of construction. So it led me to this point. So I've been in BILT now for just under 2 years as a full standalone business, but been doing prefab and modular work for 15 plus.
Yeah. I love the story of sitting there as a, student and hearing, BILT come in and kind of talk. And the first thing you noticed was the human piece of it, which I think goes back to this conversation I've had with other guests about the imagery of the industry. And sometimes what people think construction is versus what construction is, or how, the humans are experiencing the industry. But you right away notice like something different, which draws you into, this long lasting company. It's been around a long time. And that's probably one of the reasons is that they do see the employees, as humans and, not just a number that's cranking out. And we mentioned productivity, but just, hey, it's all about output. It isn't about the human side and human piece that we're all going to experience. And you said something else that I found was, very interesting was, BILT, the natural progression for BILT to go from their, when lean started coming out and lean practice, when we started putting that into our practice from construction because it came from manufacturing, right? And seeing how we can approach delivery projects through our different methodologies. And then that's a natural transition for the company to start to explore, other delivery methods, other delivery models like IPD, integrated project delivery, design build, things like that. But then it's getting into the fabrication. So with that, then, because of your experience and then kind of what BILT was doing, you mentioned 2015, right? What was it they were kind of noticing as a problem area to say, in 2025, we're going to launch BILT, right? Was there just some uniform problem that they were seeing that they really wanted to launch that company, or maybe there were multiple different problems that they were really aiming to solve to launch the company?
Sure. And I would say it's an evolution. I would say in 2015, it was more, maybe not a problem, but an opportunity. Construction can be difficult, right? It can be seen as challenges and contracts and a difficult approach. And we looked at it saying, we want to be a relational contractor. And again, that when you have that lean mindset, right? So first you go, my first day at BOLT was a last planner meeting. So that might be like the early tools of lean. But then you get into how do we turn a construction project into a team, into like a true family? How do we look out for the benefit of the project, not just the individual silos? So I think the early days, it was more the relationship, breaking down those silos and finding the advantages that brought, right? Not just eliminating waste, but truly saying, how do we, if this organization is better at this aspect, or we can combine our forces, we can be more productive as a group, have better results, and have a team that's happier, enjoying what they're doing. They're closer, they're more collaborative, they're being innovative, right? When you're in a strong work environment, you're finding new solutions. So those, I would say 2015-ish or sooner than that even, was really about taking the advantage of collaboration and relationship to spur innovation, try new things, be comfortable to expand. Now, once you get into 2020 and beyond, the labor realities are there, right? We know that there is a labor shortage coming. That 2030 is going to look very different than today with the construction force. It's aging. Our younger workforce doesn't have the same knowledge as some of the older folks do. So the translation is less into experience. We also know productivity is going down. So we are not being as productive as an industry as we used to be. So some of those, combined with our values in relationship and people, brought us to say, prefab and modular is the future. It's a way that can focus on collaboration. If you want to do prefab and modular in a good way, you have to invest time and resources in team up front. You have to solve problems and design up front. And then also, because we put so much time up front, we can start to have a different workforce that doesn't necessarily have to have those same deep skills. It's something we can teach in a different method. So we really launched BILT as a way to say, one, this is a collaborative delivery model, and two, this is a way to address challenges of the future. And also, it brings construction to places that it's hard to get. Think of like the communities. BOLT is very community based. That's one thing that brought me to BOLT. But that also allows communities to get healthcare where maybe there's a labor shortage or expensive labor or just access challenges. So many of those reasons sort of combined into, hey, it's time to launch BILT as a standalone business.
Yeah, and I think you saying you saw an opportunity, I think it was through the problems that were maybe created by some of those things that you listed, that the opportunity starts. We become more aware of it, opposed to, well, that's just how it is, so we're just got to keep cranking, pushing under the pressure. BOLT is recognizing like, okay, this labor force is shrinking, and I love that you said, hey, 2030 is going to look different because situations are going to change, and they will. But I think what's interesting, some things that you kind of shared there, when I think about the labor force and the younger generation kind of coming into this, as well as providing new opportunities. So staying into the area of the changing labor force and how you're thinking about it, going from field sort of, I don't even like the word production, but it is the output of the construction side, right? So we're in the execution phase, first bringing something in a factory. Skill sets still translate across, until you bring in automation or other forms, which we can dive into.
Mm-hmm.
This episode of Activating Curiosity is brought to you by New Life Accounting. NLA is a construction-specific firm that provides bookkeeping, controller, and advisory services to commercial contractors. So whether you are struggling to stay on top of that job costing, manage the cash flow, or make big picture investment decisions in your business, their team will help you find financial clarity. For our listeners, they're offering a free diagnostic service. That's a $500 value. This diagnostic takes a look at your current financials to help you identify areas for improvement. Plus, it's a perfect opportunity to get an expert's advice on those most pressing accounting questions. To get your diagnostic scheduled, start by booking an intro call through the link in the show notes and tell them Ryan sent you. You said something interesting. It's like the younger generation doesn't know what the older generation doesn't know. So we do have this middle gap. There is a group missing middle of knowledge that we sort of lost in 2008 to 2013, and we sort of continue to lose today. I don't think we've solved that problem, which is another imagery thing of the younger generation wanting to stay in the industry while they're here. So when you're talking about, hey, we want to change the way we're thinking about construction and move forward because that labor force is going to be different, because the areas that we want to build can't get access, there isn't the labor force to go do it, and they still deserve to have the solutions brought to them. So the other thing that you mentioned too, and I think this is so important because the prefab world, and I say this a lot, but I say it because I've been in it and I've recognized it. Like, for a long time, we tried to sell it. In the modular world or prefab or anyone else, we've been trying to sell it. And it's like, that one, it is a method of construction. So to get it to go into a design, as you just said, you're talking about going forward into a design assist or however you want to call it. And it isn't the traditional pre-construction to get these things integrated. It is, your team is probably, I'm guessing these new workforces are, whether it's designers or project engineers and project managers, executives that are coming up into that front end stage to help guide people through decision making of how your prefabrication, modular, whatever level you're going, is going to impact from an architectural as well as engineering standpoint. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, the GC, whether that's BILT or someone else, that happens to be the contract holder. So what were some of the things, one, that kind of have triggered or helped you think about it from a manufacturing side, but also as you're starting to deliver, to get further upstream, right? Because the factory can be built, but like the projects have to exist, which means the team has to get up front. So as you were doing that, how were you maybe thinking through the steps to get the teams built and how you were going to deliver the projects, or what other things do you think were important that kind of came through this journey?
Sure. So, BILT is interesting. We come from construction, right? So we come from a GC, and most of our employees right now, we're starting to get folks that were not from BILT, but most of us originally were from BILT. So we have a GC mindset, and our approach is to be a turnkey solution, right? So we think that is our differentiator, is that we are turnkey from design all the way through project activation and beyond. So we deliver the whole project. And then, of course, the other approach is you start from manufacturing and get into construction versus starting from construction and get into manufacturing. Of course, we're the GC version. So for us, we understand constructability. We understand the lessons learned from a design not being complete, and depending on means and methods, or if details aren't coordinated, the impact that has in the field. Like we know it. You can see it translate to. The whole construction industry is built around managing waste. It literally is managing waste, whether it's RFIs, submittals, field challenges. The whole thing is about managing waste. So we know that if we can solve those items up front, invest the time in we call it DFMA, design for manufacturing and assembly. That's what matters. So for us, we we partner with industry designers and architects that understand prefab and modular. We'll do prefab. We do a lot of volumetric modular building, so the whole project volumetric or hybrid. But for us, it's critical that you invest that effort up front. And it's still the traditional, you still have to have a permit set. So you still have to have construction level documents. It's just taking it to that next level. That's really the difference for us and for most manufacturers, is saying, how do we create fabrication drawings and work instructions that translates to our factory, so that our shop assemblers, who, again, might not have 10 years of experience and, carried bags on themselves for the last 10 years, can learn and understand how to construct, how to fabricate. And there isn't that gap. There isn't that time to have a gap to solve a problem, right? You have to keep the line moving. So spending that time up front is really critical in that design phase. So we find ourselves you're right, it's not pre-construction, it's design. Spending most of our energy up front, engaging the supply chain, trade partners to really detail it out to a level beyond what you see in construction.
Yeah. Well, I love how you shared it. I think that's one of the most important parts to kind of see the adoption really take hold from where we've been in the past and some of the things that we saw as challenges, because a lot of times, whatever level of offsite that was kind of being brought, right? Whatever solution, kit of parts, all the way through volumetric, depended on the architect, the engineers, the construction teams, and the factories. And a lot of times what was happening, and I think this is where maybe a lot of bad taste started coming from as it relates to offsite construction or it's called so many different things.
Yes, it is.
It's just offsite, right? Like there's levels of offsite, and it's like, choose your path. But a lot of times it was like brought in way too late.
No, yes.
And then it's like, well, that, it costs too much. Well, that's because you're stacking it on top of everything else, because the estimator had already been so far down the line that they're not sure what gets removed, where's the scope, changes and the potential gaps that are going to happen. So as you're describing it, I think this goes back to a delivery model, those collaborative models of IPD or design build, right? And bringing these groups up front, and this is how I learned to practice as an architect, like get the subs up front. Start working through those things. Like you said, there's no time in those factories to shut it down and try to go get an RFI like you would in a field. Well, that's the waste management you're talking about, like people standing and waiting. And this is something I'm interested in your thoughts too, because coming from the architecture side, getting into fabrication and construction from my background, I'm trying to get most of the design industry to understand, like, those delivery models actually provide you more control, which is what they want, over their design content and design context that they're putting together, and design intent, I should say, than throwing it over the fence as a design bid build and hoping that someone's putting something where you thought it was going to go. And, the way, the whole designing for fabrication, that's providing this level. And even the word certainty, I think, is dangerous, because there's nothing certain. It's just providing everybody with a lot more information at the right time to be making the right decisions to move forward. And as each moment's going, where you as a factory are coming in or bringing in and checking the supply chain, like you're saying, people are learning right off the bat, like, does this labor force exist? Does this material exist? Can we get it when we're supposed to be getting, and not finding it out during the construction and having to make a change? So I know that was a long
No, I love it.
kind of feedback, but I just think like having a contractor step into this arena where you're recognizing this, I think is powerful for the rest of the industry who has been a little bit hesitant. So that leads me to this, my favorite next conversation that I love having with people is trying to help all of us understand the obstacles and barriers that our mindset might tell us as it relates to these solutions. So I'm wondering, Melanie, like maybe maybe you have it from multiple perspectives because you have like what owners think, what designers think now, and inside of a construction company, maybe where some people were they believed a little less in taking this on. So I'm curious, like, what were some of those obstacle barriers, the typical things that you and your team might be hearing out there in the industry, and how are you able to kind of work through those and help people think through them a little differently so that they do take on the adoption, feel like they're part of that collaboration, that team like you're talking about?
Sure. Well, I'll tie to the first one. I'll just touch on integrated design because let's talk a little bit. Like what you just said really hit home to me. It can be a barrier for architects and engineers. I do feel that maybe they're losing some of the control, and I think you nailed it. Integrated design is the exact opposite. You're getting real-time feedback from a contractor of what is constructible, what we can do in the factory. So first of all, I would say, that can be a barrier. Now, we tend to work with folks that love this, right? That like want to innovate and want to take it to the next level. But,
Right.
For larger industry adaptation, architects and engineers not feeling like they're getting replaced and the manufacturer, the GC, is going to take over design rather than, recognizing that it's truly integrated. It's an integrated approach to help the AE team develop the best design that's going to be the fastest, most cost certainty solution. So that's one. I would say when we go to owners, there's a couple things. One, change is hard. There is a whole system built around, we write RFPs. We go through interviews. This is how we select our contractor. We know we're getting competitive pricing from market. That is a system. That is a machine that's built. So a big challenge is saying, hey, it's not new, but it's kind of new. How do I as an owner representative embrace prefab or an industrialized construction solution when our organization hasn't done it before? There's not a lot of competition. It's hard to understand certainty of cost. So a manufacturer might say a price, a GC might say a price, but how do they work together to provide certainty of price? Now we do both, so we can overcome that challenge because we guarantee both. But I think change and being that first owner rep to say, yes, let's embrace this, that's a challenge. There's also let's be real, there's a perception. When you hear the word modular, what that brings up. You think of something lower quality, temporary, not beautiful, not bespoke, not interesting, a box. You think of a box. So overcoming that is also a challenge. And then even internally, you did mention it. There's a lot of pride in construction. There's a lot of pride in the workforce. And so to say, wait a second, I've done this for 20 years out in the field in the rain and the snow, and I traveled and I did all of this, and to look at it differently. There's certainly a barrier there. These are all, you can overcome all of these with exposure, right? You can bring owners to see the quality of the product in a building. You can take your workforce and say, hey, come into the factory and we'd love your expertise to help train our younger workforce or our newer workforce, I should say. So you can overcome these, but it takes time. It has taken time. I feel like the industry something's shifting. I feel it. I feel like we get more calls. We still have to explain what industrialized construction is and convince people. I always feel like we're convincing, but it will shift. It's shifting over time. But I would say those are some of the largest barriers. There's certainly more. It's your metrics are different. Your productivity measures are different. You don't have the history of data that you used to have under construction. I will say one more and then I'll rest there. But even with GCs, And I mean, I come from a GC and I love GCs and I love regular construction and I love BILT. And, we partner together, of course, often to execute our projects. But at GC, their margins are tight. And, I think I think the general population thinks contractors are raking in large profits, but it's tight. The margins are tight and it's based on revenue. And, the difference can be if your equipment is on a job or if you have people on a job. And all of a sudden, if you're doing a volumetric modular building, 80% of the project is going into a factory. And so GCs like to look at a manufacturer as a subcontractor. But truthfully, it's a partner taking, 20 different trades and coordinating them in the shop. That's what a GC does, right? They take 20 trades or plus more and coordinate them. But now the factory is doing that. So a big portion of the workload is not under their direct management. And so there's a loss of revenue there. So there's some things that GCs and manufacturers, we have the advantage, we can work together. We understand that, but there's certainly a challenge there when you have a manufacturer and a GC working together, because it's a different way of looking at a project of who manages what and how to avoid gaps, make sure the project's successful, and then also make sure all the partners are successful.
Yeah.
A lot there, Ryan.
No, I'm glad you shared it, because it is. I mean, going back to the human piece, right? I'm going to start with the GCs and work backwards. I think what we did wrong over the last 50 years, 20 years, whatever, whether it was interior construction with offsite or bringing prefab in to modular, that was sort of, it is not new, like you said. A lot of times, everybody wanted to show their relevancy and they were bypassing the general contractor. And that became this go direct to the owner, go direct to the developer, and separate the contracts. And I recognized early, that is dangerous. One, you want to be integrated into it. If you were pushed outside of it, if you're the one living outside an IPD contract, it feels uncomfortable. So if you're separating the contracts, it's never a good solution from my perspective, from my professional perspective. And what I've seen as successful is, as you're saying, it's that partner. Now, I know it is very valid that it is a low net profitability industry. And if you are a self-performing general contractor versus others, you are seeing some of that work be pulled back. But I also think we have a shrinking labor force, and sometimes we actually go take on more infrastructure projects or other projects that need to be built by delivering in each project with slightly different levels of offsite, whatever is required, and utilizing that aspect. That would increase revenue. We'd be able to do more with less, because we're getting less output, less humans to be doing things. To the human piece that you were talking about for those who have been working in the field, and I love how much pride you even showed and shared of the industry. I am too. My whole life has been spent revolved around this industry and trying to figure out how we can help humans understand things. I think when we see that new thing coming, we go, okay, what am I going to lose? This got me here. I recognize it. I trust it. It feels safe. And if it's gone, what does that mean for me? And the human mind makes us want to hold on to those things. As an architect, as an engineer, as someone who has a specialty trade piece. And we overvalue that versus the value of anything on the other side of that change or innovation that's coming, to know that it could, those things can release us into a whole new world. And it's you're not losing it. You just didn't realize that was what you needed to get you to this next step over that point in time. And I think you said something to the perception. So the perception of modular. Well, who defined it? Who defined modular? If you're an individual sitting and you have a perception of it, it's ask yourself the question, who was it defined it, or how did I get this defined? And how is that situation different from today? Because we may have learned what we think modular construction is from the past. And I don't know, the telephones of the past are not the telephones of today. So time and innovation has changed that. Same with what these terms might mean. So how we define it is actually a trap that we're putting ourselves in, opposed to pausing for a second to explore those things of like, I don't even know how I learned this, but it seems to be holding me into this mindset like I'm never going to use it because I think it's this, versus, okay, well, maybe it's not. Maybe what I learned wasn't wrong. It's just different now, and I need to look at it differently. So I don't know. That was a lot to answer, to kind of come back with what you were talking about. But I just think we're human. We're the humans. And if we want, we can release the trap. We can get out of the limiting belief in our head of whatever it is. If we can, this is the dangerous word, find the time in a very time-poor industry to pause and relearn or investigate or become curious enough to explore. So I don't know where all I was going with that, but you got me, as you were talking, you got me just thinking about back to this human piece of the obstacles and the barriers that we tend to want to place and think through. And as you just said, it's like, I don't want to be the first person. Well, you're not.
You're not.
I mean, we've been doing, like, you're not even close to the first person. As you said, this is not new. We've been doing this a long time. And to be honest, each time we're doing it, we're getting better. And I'm curious from your perspective too, a lot of times what happens is we tried it, it didn't go the way I wanted it to, or the salesperson oversold or whatever it was. So that sticks in our mindset and we don't try it again.
Yeah.
We just hold on. So I don't know. I just, I'm thinking as you're talking through this, Melanie, that I think BILT is in a unique position and BILT to go tell the story differently than the past. The past was at some point a present and it was living then, but now we get to kind of see all those things and begin to define what is the present moment that we're in as it relates to industrialized construction and delivering projects.
Well, I can share a story to hit on that point.
Every project has them. The decisions nobody planned on making, a coordination issue surfaces, an RFI gets written, a field condition that changes the original approach. Most of the time, these aren't failures. They're simply the result of multiple systems and multiple trades trying to come together later in the process. That's one of the reasons this episode is sponsored by Overcast Innovations. Their team believes many of those coordination conversations should happen much earlier when project teams still have more flexibility, more options, and fewer constraints. By integrating building systems into a coordinated ceiling solution, they're helping reduce the complexity that often creates those last-minute decisions in the first place. Learn more by visiting overcastinnovations.com.
I mentioned early on when I was in our Chicago office, we did a program, IPD program, outpatient facilities. And as long as the team performed, the team continued. So this team that started in 2014, that team is still continuing today. And because it was a true IFOA, everything was tracked at cost. So we knew the metrics for our trade partners across the board. I remember when we first did exterior wall panels. We did this big study. Is it worth it? Is it going to work? Yeah. The math didn't math, but we said, you know what, we're going to do it. We believe it. It was one of those team things that said, the team knows it's true. We can't make it pencil, but we're going to do it. And we blew the math out of the water. It was extremely successful. The building got enclosed. It was a wonderful process. It became an old reliable. Many people do exterior wall panels, right? But for us, that was the first time we had done it for this program. And now it's an old reliable. Then we did interior rooms, exam rooms. Okay, the math didn't math. Again, everybody looks at their part, and then we did it and it mathed. And now doing exam rooms is an old reliable. So then we did a volumetric modular building, same thing, right? We saw the math. We had our projections. We did it, and then we saw the outcome. And so we have the data that says this works. When you get out of your silos and you plan it up front, it works. If you do it after the fact, you mentioned it earlier, it doesn't work because somebody's giving up a piece of their pie. It's really hard to do that after. But we're armed with this. Like in my heart, I know this works. I've seen the results. It's real. It works. You can do volumetric modular buildings. You can have speed. You can have cost certainty, and you can have higher quality. You can get it all. It all. And if you do it with a team that stays consistent, in regular construction, you can see the results. Now, imagine if you combine factory productivity with consistent teams and delivery. That's the breakthrough that I'm excited about. I mean, we've done some of that, and we're doing more and more programs, and that's where I think the productivity and the sauce is really going to make sense, and the results are going to speak for themselves. But it does right now take customers. We bring customers in, we go to go-sees, come look at our factory, come look at a project. Look, it looks like regular construction. It's the same, it's a different process, but it's the same steel. It's the same drywall. It's the same components. We think it's cleaner. It's, done with less rework. So it's tighter construction. But it still is the same. But it takes people to see it right now to realize something different. We are human. I think you nailed it. We are human, and it is a challenge to get people to think about what the future could be, or what it'll still be the same building, just fabricated different or built differently. Yeah.
No, I think the story is helpful for people to hear, kind of like how you've progressed through the testing. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot, some other things you shared, it's like we like to stay in those familiar patterns. And so, as humans, whether we are a subtrade, general contractor, architect, engineer, or a developer, like that familiar, like that's protective. Like that we know, we trust it, we've seen it. And what's interesting is, like, when it does come to prefab, it's like, well, we got to see it because we're visual. We're visual. And it's like seeing it doesn't deliver on all of the process to get you to where you're seeing it. Because the process in this, you're able to get through that is because this delivery approach, getting into the design, working through those things, like you're working to change the familiar pattern of how we've been delivering projects.
Yep. Exactly.
And that is hard as a human. It is hard to let go of what we believed we were in control of, but we never really were. And changing that such that we can address these problems, like you're saying, the labor force challenges that we have, the skill gap changes, getting things off a field, off the job site and into a factory, can be the same crews. They're just less ladder carries, less whatever. It's a safer environment and it's cleaner. But something else you shared, and this I think Brian Turmel was talking about it when I had him on, and we've had this conversation with many others. It's like when you're not doing the program, like you're saying, and I dive into that a little bit, but it is like it's one project, and all of a sudden this group of people come together that maybe they have worked on jobs, some of the sub-trades or this or that, depending on where you work in a region. But it's like a whole new crew comes in to do a building. And if you introduce something new in the middle of that, like, guess what happens? The emergency brakes go off. Like everyone goes into freak out mode because the pattern's been suddenly broken. But what I might suggest, and this is just me thinking through the mindset piece, is when the pattern gets interrupted, that's where we get to kind of pause for a moment. And that awareness brings us into an exploration. And with that, that's where we get to, as humans, we can ask deeper questions, more questions, and things that help us start to grow to understand those things. But if we stay and we want to hold on to that familiar pattern, like that, that's what people define as resistors and resistance. Well, no, that's just humans holding on to the thing they value to stay in that pattern. In the industry, we need that interruption. I don't call it disruption. It's an interruption of our minds to believe that our current state of delivering is the only way we can deliver. So hearing your story of like, hey, we now have the data, we've gone through this, we've tested from panels all the way up to now volumetric, that, yeah, the data will help people kind of understand it. And sometimes they see the data too, and they're like, well, I don't know what this really tells me. And the thing I might stress to those individuals too is trust yourself and your ability to work in a project system that maybe is slightly different, but use your skill sets as architects, use your design thinking, engineers, use your design thinking. Same as a contractor, if you're a carpenter or superintendent, somebody coming into that new environment, like the greatest skill set we all have is to relearn, to rethink, to adjust to those things. So again, not sure exactly where I was heading with all of that, but it just, you got me thinking through your story of like these obstacles, like they're there, but there's such a need and an importance to why you're doing what you're doing there at BILT. And maybe you can share this, but like you mentioned this community piece, like what makes addressing that opportunity, going for the opportunity with the problems that again are being addressed by this, what makes it so important to BILT and BOLT and in your teams to really address this?
Sure. Well, I mean, a couple of things. I would say, first to what you just mentioned about programs and projects and getting people to buy in. We still want to build beautiful buildings. We look at prefab and modular as building beautiful buildings and being a community asset. So for us, we think you can have it all. I think there is some of that mindset that, again, I have to have a building be very standard in particular, or very standard and not be beautiful. And that's not the case. So our goal is to provide beautiful buildings in communities. Our goal is to provide communities, right? So right now, I mean, our workforce, they go home every night. They can go to their kids' play. They can pick up from daycare. They don't necessarily have to. Only those that want to be part of the install team travel. The rest can come in and work every day in 70 and sunny, as we like to say. It's more like, lighting, not quite the sun, but right. I mean, it's right. In a controlled environment. You know who you're going to work with. You know where the bathrooms are. You have clean bathrooms. You've got a nice break room. You leave at the end of the day. You can get to your PTO meeting. All the things. You can be part of your community. Interestingly, another great aspect, a surprise, I would say, to that prideful workforce. Some of the folks that are close to retirement or would be retired from regular construction because, maybe the cold or the conditions or all the things are finding a home in our shop. They want to mentor. Yeah. They want to teach. So we've got a couple of folks in our shop right now that's what they're doing. They're finding a new opportunity to mentor some of the up-and-comers on the actual construction knowledge and transferring, their information. So for us, it's about the relationship, about the people, about the community. It's still construction. It's still a beautiful building. It's still something we're very proud of. And I love the smell. I love walking on a construction site and smelling concrete, like freshly poured concrete pulls me right back to my childhood. And I can walk in our facility. I don't smell concrete in our facility, but I can walk out in our factory and I can, smell that burnt metal, when you cut a stud, you still get, it's still construction, you still have all that essence of construction. Yeah. So it's a lot of the same. I think convincing our internal teams and our owners that you can still have a beautiful building. It doesn't have to be, what if we change the definition of standards? We always think when we think prefab and modular, it has to be this size, this color, this shape. And in fact, it's like, what if the standard was the team? What if the standard was, we didn't do what you said. We come together, we do a project, and then we all go off in our silos and we do a different project. But instead, we said, you know what? Instead of getting 3 competitive plumbing bids to get the best price, we said, you know what? We're going to use our partner that knows our factory, knows our details. They know they know our systems, and we're going to drive our costs down by using the same partners, and we're going to have a better experience. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of aspects that go into why we did this, why community matters, what we're doing. But it's really, if for some reason we love to dissect the construction process, we don't dissect engines, things we buy that have lots of parts and pieces, but we dissect the construction process. And if we can focus on the product, the building, versus all the parts and pieces that go into it and let us handle that, you're still going to get the same beautiful building, perhaps just a little bit higher quality. Yeah. If that makes sense. And built by people who are just, part of their community and a little bit higher quality of life, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I think we've heard this kind of productization term being used a lot. And sometimes it's like, it's hard because the industry has this definition, right? Like it gets lost in translation based off of which part of the industry you're in. Because this industry is small, but yet enormous, and takes, between the design teams and the architects. So when we think about like the word product on one end, and we think about productization with, offsite construction or methods of construction, they get lost in translation because it's like a product to an architect is like, I should just be able to specify it and not have to think about it. Right? Like toilet partitions, fire extinguisher cabinets, whatever, right? Like it shouldn't take me a lot of energy to go through this. And in this case, it's like what you're saying is like we do dissect it. It's really that all of like that whole team is the one that is going through getting it to a productization. Like it's you're part of that for the owner, not for ourselves, it's like for the community, for the owner. So I don't know, these terms, sometimes things get lost in that translation. And I think about, and I've mentioned this before, I think with others, I remember I wrote this blog post one time called, "We Need to Redefine Means and Methods." And the reason being because it goes back to the system structure, as you were mentioning before, which I think is so powerful, that we're in these patterns that are created by the systems and the structure that we as humans put into place over the last century or two. And the definitions, like, they're ours to redefine. Like, they're ours to figure out. I know there's contracts that exist over here, and I know, all of those things can still exist, but we do get to peel back those layers to say, again, current situation and the future of, like where we're heading, wherever that is, requires something different than what we're working in today. The systems and the structures, that pattern that we're keeping ourselves in. And if we want to sit and say, well, the terms this, the terms that, it's like, well, we're the humans. We get to change it if we want. So anyway, I wanted to kind of acknowledge that that part of it. So something else you said, this one hit me. The older generation that, if in conventional construction, may have to hang up the hat, may have to retire. That they as humans have given a lot of time and a lot of use of their physical, body to go build as well as their mental, and then they feel like they don't have anywhere to go. I love that you said they have a place to go mentor and to teach, because in the end, that's what it is. Like, to get to that middle part that we're missing, that middle group that doesn't exist, and even the next generation, like there is a lot of opportunity to help each other go through this change, through these things that we're experiencing in the industry. So that one that's a very human impact. And I'm grateful that you shared it, because I think a lot of times, especially in the younger generation or whoever, we might think like, we just need people to retire so I can go get a job. It's like, we want people to continue to produce, and that doesn't mean they have to be doing output on a project site. They can be producing through that education, through the mentoring, through the changing the imagery of what somebody younger might think this industry is. The other thing that you said is, yeah, we can change our mind on that end product, that it can be beautiful, that we have to, understand the process in which we get to that building might be changing, but in the end, a building is a building made of materials, made by humans, made by, machine, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't have to be that term we're using of standardization. Yes, there are factories, they only make this or they do that, but the whole point is that you're bringing all those together to get to an end product and solution. So what do you think then, thinking about back to your communities, Melanie, you have spent your career in construction. You have talked about these innovative solutions, about industrialized construction, about using technology, means and methods, delivery models, and all of that. What do you think it's costing or might cost the industry or communities? Let's go back to communities. If we continue to stay in the pattern, if we continue to stay within the systems and the structures as they were in the past and continue to apply today when we need different answers, like what do you think that is costing communities and the industry?
That's a good question. I think it's lack of access. So, we do a lot of our work in the healthcare industry, and a lot of our volumetric modular buildings have been in areas, again, where they're labor deserts, where labor doesn't exist, in communities where, indigenous communities where there isn't a labor pool. So they're not going to get healthcare. So, some of these folks are driving hours to get healthcare. Well, now we can fabricate a building in our facility and install it in 6 weeks. And it's beautiful, right? And they have access to healthcare. So I think if we don't look at a different platform of how to deliver construction, what will happen is certain communities, rural communities, won't get the care. They won't get the access to care. They'll have to travel or they'll go without it. And then in locations where labor costs are extremely high, they also won't get it because folks, health systems won't build facilities because it won't pencil. So those are my concern is the access to care. Also, I think of the jobs. The construction. Now folks will hopefully still find gainful employment, but it won't be in the construction industry. Our younger folks aren't interested as I think when I was younger, I was willing to travel. Folks aren't as willing to travel as they used to be, rightfully so, and that's good. But that means the construction industry is gonna look different, or we'll lose people to different industries. So for us, where our factory is located, we can attract a whole group of people that have very meaningful employment in an industry that might have been either intimidating or off limits to them. They might have said, I can't be gone from home for 6 months. I need to be home for my family or take care of my aging parents or whatever it is, or I want to be involved in my community. I want to be part of this organization, or I want to play volleyball, or I want to be on, whatever a personal passion is. So I think because of this is one step to help build a stronger community, whether it's your local community or a location where a facility is going. Often some of these smaller clinics that we're providing have community rooms in them. So it's it's going to a community that has lack of access to healthcare. And on top of it, now they're getting a community room that can be used for other events, right? Other community gatherings. So I think if I would summarize, I would say it's just access. If we don't do this, we're going to slow down the pace where construction can deliver projects and healthcare or whatever the project is, and ultimately lack of access.
Yeah. It's a common theme that, a lot of guests share in a conversation is that, by not addressing it, someone is missing out on something.
Yeah.
And that is people in our community. Or people, whether it's community where our businesses are or community where someone else's family is, like that is seeing the humanity piece of what we do in construction. What else are we building for if it isn't for the other humans that are in our communities or within the parts and the regions in which we live? If we aren't trying to address those problems, and that doesn't, it means being able to go build the infrastructure and build the facilities that those communities need, whether that is housing, whether that is schools, whether that is healthcare, as you're talking about.
Yeah, housing you bring up, and right, housing is another great one that this can be a huge benefit. And even components. I mean, I speak a lot about volumetric modular buildings, but we do wall panels and components and bathroom pods and all of those things that I think are becoming more mainstream, right? They're becoming more accepted. That will continue, and that's going to aid traditional construction as well. And so, I mean, I there's a wonderful place for traditional construction. I'm a big fan of it. So, if prefab and modular can support traditional construction in places where that makes sense so that projects can go up faster, provide their value to their communities sooner, all the better. That's also a huge win.
Well, yeah. And you're talking about a coexistence. It's like, again, going back to what we might lose if we think like, oh, well, these solutions are coming in and they're going to take over the traditional. No, it's going to have to be a hybrid approach.
Yes.
In fact, that is the only way that we are going to get all of these things constructed, and getting access to, whether it's access for people to work in a better environment, as you're describing, inside of a factory, especially that next younger generation. I mean, let's be honest. We're talking about a young generation that is just getting started in the workforce, probably starting families. And just because goes back to, well, that's how it was for me, so therefore it must apply to everyone else sort of mentality. We need to pause as humans in that world of, like, again, the second industrialized revolution was supposed to change how we worked, and it didn't. The way we started in the United States, especially versus Europe, I'd love to be in Europe. But like it's a different mindset about our relationship with work. We can have passion and pride in what we're doing, but if we can change how we're working and the amount of time that we need to be spending, because sometimes it's just the price, that we got to pay for a mission to relevancy to keep cranking through hours. And it's like, I know this industry loves to wear it as a badge of honor sometimes, but like the next generation does not want that.
True.
Like there has to be something more human about why we are doing what we're doing. And we can't blame them for wanting instant information and instant access. Like that's the world they're growing up in. So we have to figure out how to translate these things. And I think the point you're making is very valid. The world that they want is going to be different, but if we can provide them the opportunity to come into construction and see it from a different perspective or a different experience than what we had, that doesn't make it wrong for us. That just makes it new. And it's a true opportunity for us to kind of figure those things out.
Well said.
One of the other things that you said, and before we kind of wrap up, is just, again, going back to the community piece, we've had this conversation before of the access to healthcare. Rural hospitals are becoming less and less. We are losing them less and less. And I've had this conversation with another gentleman who's trying to help solve that as well as what you're doing in both tremendous efforts. Like going back to that again, like the problem will continue to worsen if that labor pool isn't there. And I could think of, I always bring up West Texas because I can always think about groups like HCA and SCA and those groups. It's like they have to utilize prefab because they'd be building entire cities just to be able to kind of build a hospital, and without that labor force there. The other side of it is that doesn't get built. So the people in those communities are driving, hours upon hours to go somewhere, which not only, we can all think about this, within our industry as architects and contractors. It's like, if we are resisting, if we're staying in that pattern that we're always used to, this is where the cost becomes value because, valuable to understand. Like that could be your community. That could be someone in your family's community. It doesn't even matter if you don't know them. That is someone's community who isn't getting access because we're thinking the thing we're controlling in that pattern is more important than exploring these types of solutions to go provide that, to give access to those communities. So I thank you for sharing that. So Melanie, going back to kind of big picture here, I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. I'm sure you have thought about this, not just from BILT, hearing what you're building. You've been around construction your whole life. Like you can answer it for BILT, you can answer it for the industry, but from your perspective, how do you see success, or how are you defining success as it relates to the adoption of industrialized construction and the solutions that you'd like to see utilized in the workforce?
That's a big question. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'll start with BILT, and then I definitely can comment on industry. For BILT, for us, it's the go-to market leader, providing that turnkey solution that customers can look at us to say, okay, I want a durable solution from the beginning to activation, and that we're their go-to. That success is for us, that we're looked at as the industry leader that provides speed, provides certainty, provides innovation, that we're known for those three elements. For me, it's really important that success for us as BILT means that our workforce, our team goes home every day to their families. They're part of their communities. They're present. They're present in their work. They're present in their family. They're present in their community. They show up healthy, safe. That the work that they're doing is really meaningful. That's what success looks like. Of course, there's the business metrics and the growth and all of that, which is also very important. But it's really providing value to the people and in the communities. For industry, for me, success is when the model of industrialized construction consistently delivers the full promise, right? So we always talk in construction about, is it quality? Is it schedule? Is it cost, certainty? You can have two, but you can't have three. I think we've all heard that. I think for me, success for industrialized construction is when we consistently deliver speed, cost certainty, high quality at scale. And, I think scale is really that key element, because scale means we've become mainstream, that there's RFP. I would love to get an RFP for a volumetric modular building and not be certain who my competition was. There's a few of us, right? I would love to know that there is abundance of opportunity and choice for customers, and there is abundance of competition for us, because that means we're all going to get better and we've become mainstream and we're going to continue to evolve. So, construction's biggest challenges are productivity and labor. And I think success means solving productivity and labor and providing high quality buildings, to customers in the timeframes they need them, and to get access to those communities. Really, I think if you want to go visionary, it's when IC becomes the default choice versus traditional.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair statement. It's why not shoot for that, right? As success, I thank you for sharing it again, because just hearing it from everybody's perspective, they're always unique. But you started with humans, because that's the most important part, because it only we need our employees to feel safe, that they can go home, that they have a place to work, and that they can deliver projects pridefully in their communities and for others. And to this the other success, going back towards industrialized construction and, any level of prefabrication where we actually are delivering on the promise. And my thing for that is always, we can get there, but it takes the humans who haven't done it yet or have been questioning it for a while to come in not as a forced compliance, not someone's making you be on this because someone chose to do that solution or this. Begin to explore what Melanie's doing and what all of these things are. When we're doing that, because the industry sitting over here who's doing it needs them to come in on board. And when we can do that, that's where we're getting out of our patterns. That's where we're seeing the RFPs come out. I used to say it all the time. Hey, if I was bidding every job and it was all prefab or we were up against it, not that I want to go there because I do think the delivery models are better, collaborative delivery
I
models.
100% agree with that. I should clarify. Right. I agree. Collaborative and is way better, better result. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just one of those. It's like, but when we know we're there, when we're starting to see that, and that's what I used to tell my team and others is like, we know we're getting closer. We're close to making it to where the adoption is now higher than sort of where those being hesitant about it kind of exist. So, well, I thank you for sharing. Thanks for the time. I mean, this is my favorite subject. Is trying to work through those obstacles that we commonly hear as it relates to IC and offsite construction, whether it's any kind of technology, anything, delivery model, method construction, of how others are thinking about it. So as you can tell, it excites me. I love the conversation. Melanie, I'm sure there's something that maybe I haven't asked you, but some last thought that maybe you want to leave listeners, anything else you want to share that they might want to look into or check out. Feel free to let them know how they can find you.
Sure. Feel free to jump on our website, BILT.com. We are part of the BILT group, so we have a service of companies. Really just learn about IC. I mean, I think having an open mind, certainly can learn on our website. There's others. I mean, this is a great avenue here with your podcast, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity. There's a lot of good resources out there, great conferences to attend. But to me, it's going and seeing. If you hear about a project that was done through industrialized construction, go see it. It's amazing once you get into it and you put your feet on that ground and you're like, oh, okay, this is just a regular building. So I just encourage people to have an open mind, engage early. If you're interested in industrialized construction, ask questions, engage early, learn. There's a lot of great avenues out there, but feel free to reach out to me. I can be contacted at melanie.taylor@bilt.com. So thank you so much, Ryan. This was great conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and share some content.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I'm so glad you were willing to come on and go through the conversation with me and your past, your experience, and what you're doing there at BILT. I will definitely show all the information in the show notes regarding you and BILT, and everyone can kind of check you out on the Activating Curiosity podcast as well. Once blog posts, other things that we'll be sharing. But again, Melanie, thanks for being on Activating Curiosity.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care.
Yeah, you too. So that was the episode with Melanie Taylor, Vice President of BILT, a company that was launched by Bolt in 2025. And I know we've had other guests on and we talk about industrialized construction a lot. And again, the importance is that we're getting someone else's lived experience to express how they got to this point in their career, but how they're thinking about it, how they're working within industrialized construction, how they're approaching offsite construction and delivering projects in a different way. But again, going back to the big problem and why they're aiming to even solve it, it keeps coming back to that human piece, that community, to provide access to healthcare, provide access to infrastructure, provide access to any type of building or vertical market that you might be designing and working within right now in this industry. So it is a conversation that is obviously near to me. It is spending a lot of my career in it. And I always love hearing different perspectives because it gets me thinking differently about it, because every one of us is different and the regions are different, and how we think about it in the United States versus Canada versus Europe and Asia and other parts of the world. The more guests we have on, the more perspective that we can gain around how we as humans think about these things in order to, design and plan, and what our involvement is, and the things that we may think that we're going to lose, but the reality is what we aren't going to lose is actually more what we're going to gain, and actually be able to give back and gain more things for others on the other side. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did. I know some people may just say, hey, I don't really want to be involved in industrialized construction. That's fine. I think there are areas that all of us want to explore, and we want to test, and we want to try. So getting guests on with a lot of different conversations isn't always important, but even if it isn't something that you want to do, there are probably things that you may hear that you can adjust and you can translate into those things that you're really trying to solve for yourself. So until next time, I hope you continue to look at those things, continue to evaluate them, continue to express your interest in them, and to learn more about them, and continue to activate your curiosity as well as curiosity within others. The Activating Curiosity podcast is brought to you by Connective Consulting Group and Connective Coaching, part of the Curiosity Building Experiences. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a conversation. Share the podcast with your network and help us bring more curiosity into the construction industry. Interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor? Visit us at activatingcuriosity.com for more details. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity. One of the themes that keeps showing up in conversations across the AEC industry is this: many of our biggest challenges don't start in the field. They start much earlier. The farther decisions travel through a project before teams coordinate around them, the harder they become to change. That's why Overcast Innovations is focused on bringing architects, engineers, contractors, and owners together earlier around integrated building solutions. Because when coordination improves earlier in the process, teams spend less time reacting and more time delivering on the original vision. Overcast Innovations believes stagnation is the enemy of innovation. And sometimes innovation starts by simply asking the right question sooner. Learn more at overcastinnovations.com.